Yo, what's going on, guys? It's G Miners here. Crota's End has officially released. I am tired as hell, but I want to get a full guide out for you guys with the challenges. There will be chapters below if you guys do want to skip around to the different encounters, and I am going to cover the challenge at the end of the main mechanics for each encounter because it's only a pretty small difference. As always, if this guide does help you out, make sure to drop a quick like and sub down below. We're super close to 80k subs on the channel. Let's get into it. Starting with the initial entrance and then the Abyss or Lantern encounter, the main mechanic revolves around the Chalice of Light. Here, you're going to be able to freely collect the Chalice, and you will notice that a bar is going to be filling up while holding it. This does go up over time, but it seems to also increase faster as your team gets kills. When fully charged, you're going to become engulfed in light, at which point a teammate has 10 seconds to take the Chalice off of you or you die. If it's successfully taken off of you, aka passed to another teammate, you will then become enlightened, which has an infinite duration and is only going to disappear on death or whenever you actually use it. Lastly, once you do interact with something and it consumes your enlightened buff, you then will become drained of light for 45 seconds and then can no longer pick up the chalice until that debuff disappears. To start the raid, very simply, just grab the chalice, go charge it up, pass it to a teammate to get enlightened, and then deposit the enlightened in the center of the plate you're on. This will enlighten the plate, and then multiple players are going to be able to do this with multiple different enlightens to speed up the rate at which the plate charges. You will still need to be standing on the plate once enlightened is applied to build the bridge, and then once it's built, all you have to do is drop down to start the first encounter. In this encounter, you will now start getting stacks of weighted darkness, which are going to slow you down, with a 1-minute wipe timer called Engulfed in Darkness. Here, you need to constantly pass the chalice between teammates, allowing players to become enlightened. When enlightened, a player can then use this buff to activate the lamp they're near. This will extend the wipe timer, and while your team is near the lamp, remove darkness stacks. At certain points, you will also need to deposit the chalice, aka preserve it, in different locations. These are always located around the lanterns themselves, and the way you know which lanterns require the chalice to be preserved in is because the next lantern will appear very dark. In this clip, you can see we roll up on the last green glowing lantern in a series of like 2 or 3, and you can see the next lantern is extremely dim, so we know that we need to preserve it here. Whenever you start the encounter, you will always be preserving the chalice at the first lantern. Then you're going to have anywhere from like 2 to 4 green lanterns in a row that are glowing, at which point you're going to reach the last one. You'll look ahead, notice the next one is dimmed out, which means you need to find a deposit location at that last green glowing lantern that you're currently standing by. Dimmed out lanterns will not let you deposit your enlightened buff to clear your darkness stacks, and depositing enlightened extends the wipe timer, so you can't just brute force your way through. So the TLDR for this encounter is to pass the chalice amongst your team, deposit enlightened in green lanterns to remove stacks as you progress, and then preserve the chalice wherever you can to make the next set of lanterns glow green and keep going. At the end, there is one final plate. Just deposit enlighten in there like before, build a bridge, and run through to the next encounter. Challenge for this is also to just preserve the chalice at each location it needs to be preserved before you ever deposit enlightened, which means you can only use the final lanterns in each set. So just eager edge your way through and you guys should be good. The second or bridge encounter uses many similar mechanics. Here, you guys are going to be passing around the chalice and deposit enlightened to get the bridge to start forming. Do note that if you stand on the middle plate ever, it's going to activate hive totems which wipe your team. So a player also needs to be under the side totems at all times when somebody is also on that middle plate. After this, the next major step is going to be killing sword bearers and collecting their swords to cross the bridge. To actually grab the sword though, you do need to be enlightened as well. Only players with swords and those holding the chalice are then able to cross the bridge without dying. Assuming that your team is holding open the bridge and you are holding a sword, you're going to cross and then go kill a gatekeeper that spawns on the other side and only takes damage from the sword relic. After killing it, also do make sure to deposit the relic in any of the 5 podiums. After this, you basically just want to get 3 players over to that far side. You get a sword, send 1 person over, kill the gatekeeper, and then also deposit the sword, then repeat that 2 more times until you have 3 people over. On the far side, you're going to have an identical layout to the spawn side, where these 3 players can now construct the bridge and bring the remaining players over, but there's a little bit of a twist. Because of the nature of the Chalice and Enlightened, once you are Enlightened, you cannot grab the Chalice, which will eventually leave 1 player with the Chalice, which will eventually kill them. There are 2 workarounds for this. First, players are able to get rid of the Enlightened buff by expunging it on wizards. So if you do want, you can constantly still pass this around, get rid of the buff, and that's it. But wizards are only going to spawn once 3 people have already crossed. What I think is easier to do though, is just having the player with the Chalice cross the bridge with the person who has the 3rd sword relic. On the far side, there's going to be a place that the Chalice can be deposited, and you no longer need to worry about it. The only thing to this is that you do need to have the remaining players on the spawn side of the bridge already Enlightened when that Chalice is brought over. So just as a quick and simple recap, we would start the encounter by passing the Chalice around, depositing the Enlightened buff to start building the bridge in that center plate. Once built, a player would then use their Enlightened buff to grab a sword which was dropped from the sword bearer. They would cross the bridge and kill their gatekeeper, then deposit their relic and wait. Then we would send another player over to do this, and then finally the 3rd player. When the 3rd player goes over with their sword, somebody would end up bringing the Chalice over, and then those last 2 people on the spawn side should have been Enlightened already, which means whenever their sword bearers spawn, they're going to be able to kill it, pick up the sword, and bring the last 2 over. Once 5 gatekeepers are killed and 5 relics are deposited, you're then going to have some ogres and anti-barriers to kill. After this wave of enemies, there's then going to be 5 more gatekeepers. During the wave with ogres, you guys should be passing around the Chalice to get everybody Enlightened once again. Then you're going to be able to grab the swords that you deposited and kill the gatekeepers with them, ending the encounter. The challenge for this encounter is actually extremely easy. Whenever somebody crosses the bridge, all you need to do is let it start destructing as they cross. So all you do is jump off of the center plate when that person starts to cross, so the bridge starts breaking as they run. Then all they have to do is jump the gap at the end. That's the challenge. Ute is actually a very easy encounter. For this, you just want to split your team into 2 teams of 3 players. Each will clear adds on opposite sides and push into the back center area. Your goal is to kill a ton of yellow bar knights. I don't know how many there are per side, but I want to say close to 8 of them. And eventually the Shrieker on your side will open up, which can then be killed. And assuming that both Shriekers are dead, 1 on each side, this is really where the encounter begins. Once again, you're going to want to grab the Chalice of Light, which spawns in the middle of the room that you just opened up. From here, all you want to do is pass it around until 3 people are Enlightened. This should take around a minute, so while this is happening, somebody else needs to scout. In our runs, I was the player scouting using Wishender. The scout's job is to go around the arena and find where the 3 wizards spawn. There's going to be 7 total locations, which are all blocked off rooms. These rooms will either have a Shrieker or a wizard in it. And again, you're looking for the wizards. With Wishender, you could just charge a shot and see the enemies through the walls. So the scout's job is to rotate to each of these 7 rooms, locate those 3 wizards, then call that out. The locations of the 7 areas are the 3 rooms above you, and then the upper and lower rooms in the right and left tower. So we just ended up calling these top right and bottom right for the right hand side tower, top left and bottom left for the left tower, and then back right, back middle, and back left for the rooms that are above us, but inevitably in the back of the arena. Once done, those locations are where 3 Enlightened players are going. You need Enlightened to actually get into these rooms, and then killing the wizards starts a damage phase. Damage is basically just chaos mode. The boss's shield drops, and you want to do around 1/3 of her health. Just spam rockets, and that's basically it. However, at the end of the damage phase, you will need one more player to be enlightened. This player is going to run up to the boss and expunge it. If you fail to expunge after a damage phase, your team will just wipe. So keep in mind, you will want the last player to get enlightened to expunge, but it ends up being super easy since you're constantly holding the chalice and passing it around even during DPS. The only other thing that I should mention is this encounter does technically work on a timer. The damage phase duration is going to be indicated by the dark liturgy buff on the left hand side of your screen. This will always pop up when your team goes in to kill wizards, but it will also pop up if you guys are slow, and if it does pop up early, even if you somehow manage to kill the wizards and then still get to damage the boss, you're going to have less time for damage. So Dark Liturgy works basically as a wipe timer for the encounter that also ends up controlling how long you can damage the boss for. Upon dealing damage, all you need to do is just repeat mechanics of getting the enlightened buff, passing that around, and then also scouting where the wizards are. But the second time for damage, there's going to be 4 wizards to kill, and the third time, there are 5 wizards. Challenge for this encounter is to make sure each player passes the chalice during a phase. Not just the damage phase, but the entire encounter phase. And chances are, if you're doing this normally, you're already going to be passing it a bunch. There could also be an order associated with this. We found the challenge to consistently fail whenever we got to the 3rd damage phase, so we just ended up 2-phasing your ute to make things much easier. Lastly, for Crota, things are extremely similar once again. You're going to have a chalice which spawns in the bottom center of the arena where you want to pass it in order to get people enlightened. The only major difference here is that you will need to be standing in a pool of light in order to actually be able to pass the chalice, which does move to different locations, so do keep that in mind. Boomer Knights are also going to be spawning in the top 2 towers. These are going to need to be killed, which will then spawn in a set of ogres, some wizards, and a sword bearer down in the middle. As always, the sword may only be grabbed by enlightened players, and here you are going to be bringing Crota's overshield down with the relic. My team did this 1 relic at a time. Being under power, applying a debuff, and then throwing healing nades helped a ton. And what you want to do is heavy attack, super, and then spam heavy attacks. If done correctly, you can get off 3 to 4 hits per relic, and it's going to take around 3 relics to typically bring his full shield down. So all you need to do is keep killing boomers, then spawn in the sword bearers, which can be killed to get more relics. Also do note that the chalice can be preserved in the bottom center of the arena whenever you guys no longer want to worry about it. After 3 relics, you're going to bring him down and deal damage to him. And that's it. Other than that, an Oversoul will spawn in, which indicates the length of your damage phase. It's going to be 30 seconds, and you will have a timer on the left side of your screen. You are going to also want 1 player in damage with the Enlightened buff to break that Oversoul right before the timer hits 0. This is going to end damage and then prevent you from being wiped, but do note destroying the Oversoul early will also end damage phases early. When it comes to final stand, Crota is going to go immune for like 10 to 15 seconds, then damage just starts back up again. You are also able to destroy the Oversoul during final stand to briefly extend your damage, but it's a pretty massive damage check here, so make sure to save supers for this. Lastly, for challenge, all you need to do is bring his full shield down in a short duration. You basically need to use 3 swords at once, and that's it. That is everything you guys should need to know to beat the Crota's End raid in Destiny 2. Do keep in mind, I am making this video right after my contest mode clear, so there will likely be some better and easier strats to use later down the road. And if you guys aren't playing 20 power under, things should be much easier. I stream a bunch over on my Twitch. A link to that is in my description down below if you guys ever want to stop by. As always, have a good one, guys. Peace.